Jersey and Guernsey, but there are claims of appalling conditions and exploitation. Kathy Keir now reports on a social and economic issue that affects all three islands.
Miles from the Portuguese mainland off the North African coast lies the island of Madeira. Thousands of visitors are attracted by its unspoilt character and permanently mild climate. The island is covered with lush vegetation, the volcanic soil making it ideal for producing the wine Madeira is famous for. It's a natural paradise, but to some people it's a paradise lost. Like all islands, Madeira's resources are limited and at the moment can only support a permanent population of about 250,000. Wages are very low compared to most of Europe and jobs scarce. About 1 million Madeirans have to leave their homes and families to seek work abroad. They gamble on making their money abroad and go all over the world: Venezuela, South Africa, Brazil. But many find themselves working on other islands in communities far more wealthy than their own. It was a TV detective that really put Jersey back on the holiday map. No doubt the producers were attracted by the picture postcard locations and obvious prosperity. Banking and finance has made Jersey and neighbouring Guernsey a magnet for billions of pounds seeking a tax haven, and it's said there are more millionaires' mansions to the acre than anywhere else in Britain. But at the other end of the financial spectrum are the seasonal workers and immigrant labourers, the vast majority of whom come from Madeira. Together with their blood relations from mainland Portugal, for many years these men and women have laboured in the hotels, fields and greenhouses. They're the muscle and backbone of the tourism and agriculture industries. Their efforts have helped to create much of the economic prosperity of the islands. Few people would deny the importance of their efforts, yet the story of the workers from Madeira is one of blood, sweat and fears.
We are second-class citizens in this island. The people don't respect us. The farmers where we work, the hotels, they don't. You always tell us, we need you. Jersey is doing very well because of your work. But that is only words. In actions, we have nothing. I mean, what we've been gaining for the last 10 years in accommodation and a few rights is nothing. It's the only today people, I think, in the world who can come this island and work so many hours for so low pay.
Those bitter sentiments certainly reflect concerns which have raged for years. The way these people were treated has been the shame of the islands. With low basic pay, they've had to toil long hours to earn a decent wage. Some have had to tolerate appalling living conditions in shacks and sheds and without proper sanitation. They've had to endure hardship and neglect and alleged exploitation. To address the problem, 2 years ago, the States of Jersey Department of Health published a much-needed voluntary code of practice. It laid down basic standards of staff accommodation, covering items like sleeping arrangements and toilet provision. The code has led to many improvements, but it isn't legislation. Yet this is an issue of vital importance to future prosperity. The Seymour Hotel Group are regarded as good employers. They realise how important it is that they continue to remain an attractive company to work for. Because of recent changes within the EEC, immigrant workers no longer need work permits. There's competition in Europe to attract cheap labour, and the Channel Islands have had to make improvements. The Seymour Group have gone to considerable lengths and cost to provide good working conditions.
What are they like? They're marvellous. They're very good workers, good timekeepers, very professional. We're delighted to have them with us. And we have to maintain our position as an attractive place to come and work. We need these people. They need decent conditions. We have to give them to them. We have to invest to do it.
And they have. This accommodation block was purpose-built. The staff who live here enjoy individual bed sitting rooms for which they pay £25 a week. This is precisely the kind of accommodation the Code of Practice seeks to encourage. It's warm, clean and comfortable, unlike this. People live here for between 5 and 10 months at a time. The workers whose home this is felt unable to take part in this programme as they didn't want to fall out with the farmer. They wouldn't let us film inside their rooms. They did reluctantly tell us that some are so bad people shouldn't be living in them. 11 share one lavatory and just 2 outside taps. Because they can earn more in Jersey than they can at home, they said they had no choice but to put up with it. Some return year after year. Their employer, whom they consider to be a fair man, provides the sheds free of charge. He now has planning permission to build better accommodation for next year. It's the indignity of scenes like this and the lack of humanity that have fueled concern for the Portuguese and the way these people are treated.
They predominantly are Madeiran workers, as it so happens, but I hope that no one thinks, for instance, that certain accommodation, if it might be substandard, is merely so because it's a Portuguese worker. That would be totally incorrect. And I think you're going to find that wherever you go, if anyone comes across accommodation which appears to be substandard, then I think that ought to be reported immediately to the authorities.
Do you actually go around and inspect farms?
No, it's not my job to do that. I mean, public health, that's their job to do that.
While we've been making this programme, we found some people living in pretty appalling farm accommodation, like wooden garden sheds, tin huts. Do you not think that since we've managed to find this, that you shouldn't be doing something to find it?
I'm sure you're right, that it is an area where one could go out and find appalling conditions in housing. The matter is having the resource to go out and do that, perhaps at the expense of something which is equally as important, but perhaps more urgent.
Throughout the making of this programme, we spoke to dozens of Portuguese workers in Jersey and Guernsey who are extremely happy, but there were some who were bitter about the way they're treated and felt exploited. But not one of them was prepared to be interviewed on camera about these allegations or show us their conditions. They fear losing their much-needed jobs if seen complaining.
Está só filmado ou gravar?
But Tony Fernandez has nothing to lose by speaking out. An injury has left him unable to work and he no longer has to hold down a job. Tony now helps his people by interpreting when they go to hospital and liaising with the authorities. In spite of many improvements to working conditions, Tony is still frustrated at the way some employers treat his people.
You know what is a blacklist? Blacklist is if you do in a farm something wrong, if you complain twice, none of the farmers in this island will give you work anymore. That happens the same in a hotel.
Well, you must remember that they're living in a place that is not their home, and I don't think that they feel free to be able to speak out. First of all, their job may depend on it. Their family livelihood back in Madeira may depend on what they're bringing from here. And so they're not going to talk out and lose their job and not have the money to send to their families.
At the recent elections, Stuart Sivray became one of the youngest senators to join the Jersey State's Assembly. He too feels there's much room for improvement and understands why it's not just the Portuguese who are afraid to complain.
People won't speak out. There is this pressure put upon people not to rock the boat, not to wash our dirty linen in public and that sort of thing. There is this sort of climate of intimidation that exists in the island, and it's very, very unhealthy. It's perhaps strange for people in the UK to understand we're a very sort of insular and inward-looking community, and that sort of atmosphere of not wanting to speak out and not wanting to be seen to be causing too much trouble does exist. And I do think it's high time people stopped being afraid to speak out about things and actually start speaking out about those things that they see around us in our community that could do with a little improvement.
There's room for a little improvement on this farm. Jersey potatoes are one of the island's best-known exports. In this barn are stored thousands, all destined for our dinner plates. But potatoes aren't the only things to reside here. Tucked away in a corner of the barn, these garden sheds and makeshift wooden huts are home for the Portuguese people who work here. They live in conditions that can only be described as squalid. The barn is cold and dirty, and the washing facilities are derisory. It's accommodation like this that sparked outrage and cries of exploitation. But things aren't quite that simple. John Lammy is the grower responsible for providing the huts. He's well aware this accommodation isn't up to scratch, but he's had no complaints from the workers who live in the huts.
They are the hardest working agricultural staff that are available to us in the island at this point in time.
Why don't you employ local people on your farm?
I would love to employ local people, but the reality of the situation is that most local people find agricultural work demeaning to their stature.
Is it because of the low wages or the lack of accommodation, or is it just that?
I think the reality is that they're just not interested. It certainly isn't because of low wages, because the vast majority of agricultural workers earn well over £200 per week at this point in time.
But don't they earn that much by working very long hours and lots of overtime?
That's quite correct. That I accept, yes.
Basic wages for agricultural workers in Jersey have just gone up to £3.61 an hour, and this begins to explain why some have been prepared to accept poor conditions. They haven't come to the Channel Islands for a holiday, they want the money, with as much overtime as possible, and they want to live as cheaply as possible. John Lammy makes no charge for these huts, where staff have been housed for just 2 seasons, and they've been content to return year after year. In '94, a new purpose-built accommodation block will be provided, but funds are scarce.
Most of these farms are tenanted, and the occupier of the farm is loath to spend any of his own money on a property that will never be his, and the landlord in turn obviously wants a return on his capital, and it would not be sufficient to entice him to build any purpose-built building. The last 2 years in Jersey and Guernsey agriculture and horticulture, returns have been absolutely abysmal, and in the majority of cases lost situations have arisen.